I think in the UK style education system, the UK went very much towards being assessment driven, and national curriculum tests at 7, 11 and 14. And I think the UK education system has recognised that it went too far and is pulling back from it. And quite rightly so, because one of the things that it started to do was to chunk pieces of education into very small pieces, and then measure each one, a sort of tick box mentality. And in terms of advanced cognitive learning, that's a very bad thing to do, because what children need to do is to get a kind of holistic picture of something. And sometimes learning for children doesn't happen in a completely sequential kind of way. So sometimes a child can appear not to be making much progress at all because they're kind of gathering random pieces of information, and then it's as if suddenly the penny drops and it all clicks into place and they can make a huge leap forward. So assessment, it doesn't happen in quite the neat, tidy way that sometimes systems suggest that it should happen. And the problem with that is that a child can then become quite demotivated in that system. But in order to do what Finland does, you have to have a very well-structured, supportive framework to enable that. So if you just let it all happen, that's also been found not to be very productive. So I think that's why everybody is so interested in the Finnish system, because they seem to have a bit of the kind of nirvana, really, because they seem to get the results in a kind of positive kind of way, but it is carefully done. And I think, as I say, the English education system sort of was very laissez-faire, and then it went very, very far down the other way, and it's kind of come back. But I also think with the British education system that the British education system can be taught flexibly or can be taught quite rigidly, and the interpretation of it is critical, because it doesn't have to be as rigid as it sometimes is. Now, because I've answered that question, I had to think about it. I forgot the other question. Oh yes, the opportunity to talk to children. What I've been talking about today, so really that's another really good question. Helping children to understand what I've been talking about today is really important, in my view, to helping them to be successful learners. So whether it's me personally or whether it's other people within the school, part of what we're trying to, I'm really interested in doing, is working with our schools in Nord Anglia Education to help them to do this, so that children really kind of understand the journey to high performance. They understand what it's about. They understand that, part of it's in their hands. Part of it is about they can do this, and that the possibility is there, but it's not necessarily going to come if you don't make any effort. So it's your choice whether you choose to do some things or not. So the short answer is, it may or may not be me personally, but the ideas will be something that we hope to take forward in school, of course with Mike's consent.
Thank you. I'm going to give opportunity for 2 more questions, and then any further questions can be outside. There is still some drinks and some snacks. But are there 1 or 2 more questions that people would like to ask before we exit the globe? If anybody sees a hand go up, can you all wave at me? I've got one over there.
I have a child who is always unwilling to try. How can I help him try?
If anybody didn't hear that, with a child that's very unwilling to try, how can we help that child to try? And maybe one more, if there's a last question someone would like to ask. No? Well, we'll just take that one. Thank you, sir.
It's really difficult and very frustrating as a parent. I suppose part of my kind of answer is it unwilling, do you think, because it's fearful and kind of anxiety? Because that's part of sometimes why people won't try, is because they're fearful of what it will be like. And and it's hard for them to remember that usually when they try something, it was better than expected. And that's part of what you have to do, is you have to remind them that that's how you felt last time, that you didn't want to do this or you didn't want to do that. But really it turned out really well. So try and remember that it will turn out well. I also think there's a little bit of sometimes this is assuming it's sort of trying new things. There's also a little bit of sometimes just actually insisting that they try because they can't actually do that for themselves at that stage, and then getting to reflect on, now, how was it? How did it feel? Of course, I'm not sure which kind of trying it is, whether it's making the effort kind of trying, because in terms of getting children to make more effort, i.e. you think they could do better if only they would put in more effort, I think that's just an ongoing conversation about why you might, what's the purpose of it, what's the consequence of not doing it. But to be a good parent is often, it's the most frustrating thing, because you just wish your children had the knowledge that you've now got about all of these kinds of things. And there's no easy, fast remedy to it. I think you just have to keep encouraging, keep being patient, and just try not to lose your temper about it. Because sometimes, if you have a child who has behaviours which you just find you really desperately want to encourage a different kind of behaviour, it becomes a kind of point of friction between you. And it gets harder and harder, because every time it's the same old story. So patience is the best I can suggest, which is not a vast comfort in the short term, and I'm sure you've tried it. But keep at it. Just keep telling yourself. Thank you.
Yes.
You talked about drilling and over-drilling. Would you differentiate with all the managers when you say drilling and over-drilling?
Yes, so you're asking about the difference between drilling and over-drilling. So practicing to the point where it becomes destructive. So I think if you want your child to do well, and they do need to practice. So if you want them to learn something, they need to learn it, and they may need to practice in order to learn. But if they keep failing and you keep saying, yes, you have to try again and again and again, it can become quite negative, in which case the best possible thing to do is take a break and maybe come back to it at some other point, because you kind of tipped over from being, a positive kind of reinforcement into a kind of negative kind of fear, where the task has become, I can't do it, and then the child is in a kind of mindset where they're not going to be able to do it because they're just too anxious to be able to do it. So what we know from research evidence is that, for example, if a child repeatedly does an assessment and fails at it, you can improve on the assessment up to a certain level, and then after that it actually goes backwards, because the child kind of reaches a stage where they just get into an emotional state where they can't respond well. And that's part of why the sort of self-confidence and self-belief is so critical in children being successful, because if you get into an emotional state of anxiety, then you close down, and even the things that you thought you could do before, you're no longer sure you can anymore. So the kind of what you really want is there's a very interesting American guy called Cent McKiley, very difficult name, who has this concept called flow, which is all about the juxtaposition between skills and challenge. And what you're really looking for is challenge, which is quite a high challenge, but also quite a high skill, because then you're in a position where actually this is quite a hard thing, but I know I've got the skills to do it, and then you will work hard and achieve it. And when you do, you achieve this kind of thing which he calls flow, which is sort of in the zone, doing well. and it's a very rewarding experience, and it sustains you to do that the next time around. But if you've got really high levels of challenge and low level of skill, then it creates an anxiety, and you become, I just can't do this, I don't know what to do, I'm really in a state. And some of you will recognise that sometimes for some children, when they come home with homework, that's how they are. I can't do it, I don't know how to do it, I don't know, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. And that's the emotional state, and you have to calm that down before they can even begin, because they've kind of got themselves into such a state that they can't start. So you just want to drill in a positive way, but avoid getting into the emotional downhill, because yeah. It's very difficult to be quite precise. You just have to take the situation as it comes. But the general, when I say you need 10,000 hours of practice, I don't mean you do them all at once. So they're kind of, it's over a long period of time. In terms of how much practice do you do at any given time, you do the practice to the point where it's no longer really being a valid practice, it's becoming quite negative. And it's a very difficult thing to judge, and it's different with each individual child. So, going back to the personality types, if you've got a sloth, you might have to, practice really, you have to push on the practice. But if you've got a child who's, kind of a bit timid, then you may not be pushing quite so strongly. So I can't be more exact than that, because you really have to look at your own individual child. But that's the sort of general principle. So thank you. I'm happy to talk to anybody for a few more minutes afterwards if you just want to talk. But thank you very much.
I would say that whilst Professor Eyre does have to return to the UK, in just under 3 weeks, some of her Education Department team will be coming out and working with us. So it's an ongoing relationship, and we look forward to seeing Professor Eyre herself at her next opportunity to come out. I'd just like to remind everybody we'd love to have the little bits of paper, the feedback from you, either on your way out, or if you want to fill them out later and return them to us, that's fine. I'd just like to finish with 2 thank yous. Thank you, all of you, for coming out tonight. It's great that you're here, and my final thank you again to Professor Eyre for giving us such an interesting talk on her ideas. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you.